special guest speaker today that is going to be sharing tips on how you can write your book. Her name is Erin Weideman, and she is a best-selling author. She actually sold over 9 million in sales for her best-selling children's book series called Bible Bells. If you have not seen my Stories for His Glory episode that I did, then definitely check that out after this video. I'm going to link it here. But I interviewed her on just her story and her journey and everything that she's walked through in her life. And she is just amazing, and she is a writing coach and so much more. So I think that this video is going to be a treat for you guys. I encourage you to watch all the way to the end of this video, because I'm going to be giving you guys some amazing resources, letting you know how you can work with Erin, how you can work with me to write your story and to get your book out there, okay? So you want to watch the video all the way through to the end. But without further ado, I am going to bring her on, and we're going to just hop right into it. Hey, Erin, welcome.
Hi, Karolyne. Excited to be here, and I love that you just alluded to the problem, which we're going to tackle in today's video, which is essentially, how do you write a best-selling book? Not just actually get your book done, but how do you make it a bestseller? Because writing a best-selling book is hard. It's hard to figure out whether you are going the traditional publishing route or taking complete control of the process and doing it on your own, like Karolyne, you've done, like I've done. There are a lot of outside challenges that people face, not to mention that inner dialogue that's probably going on in your mind, where it's like, do I have enough experience? Do I have enough knowledge about what to do? I've never done this before. The learning curve is too steep. Like, this is going to be an expensive process. And you're probably anticipating, like, I'm going to have to try a lot of things and fail at a lot of things while I figure it out. And that was definitely the running narrative for me. I was stuck at the beginning and not really able to understand how to move forward. And so if you're watching this video, like maybe you've already wasted a lot of time and effort and money trying to figure out how to get your book written, and maybe you haven't made any progress, or you've made a little progress, but you haven't been able to get there. And that's what it was like at the beginning of my writing career. So I just wanted to pop in here and work with Karolyne, and she has so much wisdom to bring to this conversation too. We're going to share our 7 best tips for writing that book that you know is inside you, how to make it a bestseller. And really, before we dive in, you've got to know that the secret to writing best-selling books is sort of twofold. Number one, you need to have the right plan. And number two, it's got to be personal. And what I love about linking up with Karolyne and knowing the work that she's done in her writing career and speaking and all the things that she's doing out in the marketplace, like, we have failed and done pretty much all of the work for you, because we know through all of the different journey and like the path that God's had us on, like the exact process that's going to take you to, okay, I'm going to sit down at my desk. I'm going to write this book. I'm going to get it done. And today is all about saving you like a ton of time and energy. And it is going to take work on your part, but I know, and I know Karolyne would say this too, like, we want to be here to encourage you. You can do it. And that's what these tips are going to be for you, because you cannot create a best-selling book that truly impacts people without understanding what we're about to share with you. So Karolyne, I just want you to just introduce maybe the first tip, talk about why you think it's important, and we'll just dive right in.
Yes, that is so good. And one of the things that you said that is so important is that this is going to save you time. And time is so essential in this process of writing a book. And whenever I get people that come to me for writing coaching, a lot of their, concerns or a lot of their struggles has to do with time. People may say, I've been working on this book. I've been sitting on this book for years and it's still not done. Or maybe their issue is procrastination and they're just like, I just can't find the time to do it. And, a lot of times when we think of, writing and we think of timing, we think of it in a passive light, like I just can't find the time. But we have to take leadership over our time. So our first tip is time leadership. You have to be intentional and put in the work to actually write the book, because before you can be a best-selling author, right? You first have to become an author. You first have to write that book, and the book is not going to write itself. So time leadership, being intentional about your time, is so important. And you have to know who you are, because every situation is different. Everyone's circumstance is different, right? So the way that I might write a book as a mom of 3 kids and as a wife may be different than someone else who maybe has more flexibility, right? So ask yourself, what is my lifestyle? What can I do? You may be a person who maybe you want to write in little increments at a time. Maybe you want to write every single day, so you have that consistency there where you can dedicate every single day of the week to writing, but maybe you only write a few sentences or a paragraph. I can't do that because I have some days where it's just too hectic and I can't write that day, right? So with me, I'm the type of writer that when I do have an opportunity to write, maybe I take one day out of the week, or, I write every other week. I write in big chunks, and I call them spurts, to where I can write like 1 or 2 chapters in that setting, and that's what works for me. So you have to see, what is my writing style, what works for me, and then become intentional about that. One thing that I recommend to everyone is having a writing schedule that you can really use and keep track of your progress, because not only will it hold you accountable, but it will motivate you, because if you have a writing schedule, you're able to see, wow, look at how much progress that I'm making. When you're not really documenting your progress, you may lose that motivation because you're seeing it as this big feat to overcome. I have to write this book, 30,000 words, 60,000 words, whatever, and I have this deadline, and you're so focused on the deadline where you may just discourage yourself and not even want to pick up the pen, not even want to sit down and write. But when you have a writing schedule and you're putting aside that time to be intentional, and you're also tracking your progress, and you're able to be motivated and say, look how much I did last time. Let me try to do a little bit more this time. Let me push myself and just keep track of my progress. That's really going to encourage you. And that is the first step to becoming a best-selling author. You first have to write the book and become an author, period. So I just encourage you in that. And I actually have a writing schedule resource that I created to help anyone who is struggling with time leadership. And I'm going to share with you guys towards the end of this video how you can get your hands on that so that it can be a benefit to you. But that's definitely my first tip, is time leadership.
So good. And we talked about, like, even in the introduction, right, having a plan, right? So often, I think in the early season of my writing career, I was like, well, I have an idea for my book and I have a desire and a passion. And it wasn't until I got clear on the schedule, like the minutes and the hours and the time blocks that worked best for me, as somebody who was working a full-time job, who was a new mom, and just, I was in a season of like a lot of unknowns and firsts, and but still had that passion and desire to write the book. But it wasn't until I figured out how to marry my passion with like a practical schedule. How does this writing time live on my calendar? Where it began to make all the difference, which feeds so beautifully into tip number 2. And if you're writing these down, tip number 2, once you get time and your schedule and get your hands around that, the next real step is to set up a life-giving writing space that lends itself to your creativity, your ability to partner with the Lord, to hear from Him, to be in tune with the Holy Spirit, and to really dive into the creative process to get your book out of your mind and down on paper. And I want to sort of tackle this in 2 different sections, because a lot of my time as an early writer was spent not writing in home in like a beautiful writing space that I had created for myself. Like, I had a busy, loud toddler running around. I was grading papers at the time because I was a teacher. So my like focused writing time with my schedule took place outside the home at our local library. And I loved working there. Number one, it was quiet, so I could like think and be alone with my thoughts and concentrate for extended periods of time. Like, I figured out I worked best in like 60 and 90 minutes at a time. And then I would need to get up and take a break and kind of move around. But I loved working at the library, not only because it was quiet, but because you could bring food and drinks into the library. And like, not everybody's local library allows beverages and snacks to come in. So it was the perfect space for me. They had a really cool patio on the deck outside, and I could see the ocean. I could see these beautiful flowers, and it just created an amazing scene and environment that could lend itself to that creativity I was trying to access. If you're able to work outside the home, that's great. Or if you're in a season where outside your home is the best solution for you, you want to be outside your home in a way that minimizes distractions, right? If you're working at a coffee shop, like I'll do a lot of work at a coffee shop nowadays and make sure I bring things like my headphones. I make sure my dings and pings on my phone and my computer are all switched to do not disturb. I've even gone so far as to like remove the email app off of my phone, or close out of browsers on the internet, right? So if a ding pops up or an email comes in, it's not something that will try to yank me out of my creative focus time. As a writer, I want to encourage you to be really disciplined, no matter if you're outside the house or inside the house. And right now you're thinking, oh, inside my house, there's a whole world of like different kinds of distractions. Maybe if you're a wife or a mom or you're single, whoever you are in this season of your life, you want to be very intentional about minimizing those distractions. So if you can create a space at your home that is life-giving, that is free of distractions or free of, noises or different happenings that will pull your attention off of what you're doing, that is going to be a total game changer in terms of, okay, I've got my writing schedule. I've got a strategic space where this creativity can happen. I'm going to sit down and aim to get this book done. And I've got a writing space that allows all of my creative ideas and thoughts and the lessons that I want to share to just pour out onto the paper. Karolyne, do you have anything to add about that? Because I know you've probably gone through different iterations of like, this is where I write my books or this is where I create resources. Will you talk about what you do that you felt has really been positive in your writer's journey?
I mean, I think that that's so important. Sometimes it's just switching up your environment, and kind of going back to what I said, like in order to first be a best-selling author, you first have to write the book. But a lot of people get stuck because they say, I have writer's block, I'm not inspired, I don't know what to write about. So sometimes that inspiration may come by just switching up the environment, going outside in nature, things like that, like the ocean, like nature. I get inspired by those things, and it just helps to get my creative juices and my imagination flowing. So I think that that's definitely a great tip. My third tip would be to know your target audience. And this goes even beyond just writing a book. If you're selling anything as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, right? Outside of a writer, I'm also an entrepreneur and have several businesses. And it's important to know who you're writing to, because this is going to impact your tone. It's not even just what you're saying. Sometimes it's how you're saying it. It's how is the message relayed. The way that I would speak to the clergy is different than how I would speak to children, right? So who is your target audience? And a lot of writers, they may put a book out there and they're like, why is my book not selling? And it's because they didn't take the time to really discover, who am I trying to reach? Who is my target audience? Who is God really calling me to and calling me to serve? And if McDonald's, is creating burgers, but they have the wrong target audience, they're trying to reach out to health nuts or people who are vegans, then they're not going to make much sales. So they have to discover, who am I serving? Who is my target audience? And that is really going to elevate your book to another level, because when people purchase your book, they're going to feel like this was written like just for me, and they're going to love it because you're going to be really serving them and giving them a message in a way that they can understand and receive it. I even think about Jesus, like he would speak to the disciples differently than he would speak to crowds of people when he spoke in parables. So you really have to understand who your target audience is when you are writing your book and sharing your message.
That helped me so much, I think, in my early season as a writer, because when I had the idea for Bible Bells, I was like, well, who is this for? It's for all girls everywhere. Like every girl on the planet needs to understand her God-given identity in Christ, right? But it wasn't until I honed in and thought, okay, like number one, like my readership is going to be different than the people who are actually purchasing this book. So the book itself needs to speak directly to my young reader. But as far as the marketing and the overarching messages, like I had to hone in on my target audience for selling and marketing, which had to do with intentional adults. These are parents, grandparents, faith leaders, people who understand the very important value of not just character training, but identity in Christ training for young girls and the barriers that stand between them. So it's fun to sort of ideate and brainstorm, well, who is my target person? Like in an ideal world, what message is going to resonate with that particular group of people, and getting really clear on the language, but having that target audience is so, so crucial. I'm glad you mentioned that, Karolyne. Okay, on to tip number 4. This one has to do with really what the main differentiator is for you and what's going to make your book truly stand out and be different than anything else on the market. And that is your personal story, your testimony. Because at the end of the day, no one has experienced exactly what's happened to you. No one has been able to see and look back and see the ways that God has worked inside your story, what he's blessed you with, the challenges, the struggles, the pain and suffering that he's brought you through, and you come out the other end and now you've got a blessing to share with somebody. So tip number 4 has to do with having a mechanism, having a plan, or a super simple process for diving deep into your personal story, because it's the one thing that sets you apart, right? The number one thing I hear as a writing coach and somebody who is now coming alongside authors to support their creative journey is, yes, like something has happened to me and God has done a greater work in my life. And I know that's meant to bless people and my testimony is powerful, but how do I know what to share? How do I know which stories to include? How do I know if I'm sharing too much? I'm supposed to be vulnerable, but I need to, not overwhelm them with every single detail of my story. And how do I choose? So having a process, a super simple process for diving into what you've gone through and pulling out and extracting those powerful stories, that deep, meaningful language, the takeaways that aren't just for you, but they're for your reader, is really what's going to set you apart and position you for a best-selling book. And it wasn't until, as somebody who has walked a 5-year cancer journey, I experienced a radical healing. I'm 10 years cancer-free. God brought me a husband and kids and, business idea. And I never expected to be here. I remember feeling extremely paralyzed at even the thought of sharing my personal story. And it was not until I figured, okay, you know what? My story is powerful. There is a message inside here. It may not even be the one I think it is. Let me sit and do some deep creative process work with the Lord. Allow the Holy Spirit to speak to me about my story and how it can be used for God's glory, how it could be used to bless somebody, to share the gospel with somebody, and to give a benefit out in the marketplace for my reader, to articulate a promise to my reader and actually fulfill that promise through the stories I'm sharing, through the messages I'm sharing. So as far as that 4th tip, knowing what's different and special about your story and being able to talk about it, share it with people, has certainly made all the difference in my life. And I know Karolyne would say the same thing too. There's something different happens as soon as you're willing to share that personal element and let people come in and experience what you've gone through.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so important. And a lot of people, they're like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know how to share my story. So going through that process of personal story analysis and being able to pull that out. I even think of, when we do developmental editing and help people dive deeper and ask them the questions and they ask themselves the questions, it really helps to pull their story out of them and see how all the pieces connect, because really God is the one who writes our story. So as storytellers, we're just really reflecting the story that God already wrote, but trying to understand that and put the pieces together. So the next step that I'm going to share is number 5, creating an outline. Now that you know your story, you may say, where do I start? What order do I put it in? Should it be in chronological order? Should I start at my childhood, or should I start at the day I got saved, or should I work backwards, right? So creating an outline is going to be so essential, because you have to have a vision and a structure in order to build upon your story and really expound upon it. So an outline is super important. Even if you don't have the perfectly structured A, B, and C numerical order, even if it's just bullet points, start with something. right? So when I want to write a book and, I have a story to share, I'm like, what are the main points that I know no matter what I have to touch on, I have to hit on? And then I just write those out and I'm able to go back one by one and fill it in, with just expounding upon it and background and all of that good stuff. You just want to fill it in with different elements, whether you're incorporating scripture, anecdotes, other people doing interviews, whatever type of content that you're going to include. It needs to have a structure and foundation. So an outline is like the bare bones. And then after you have the bare bones, you're going to add the meat to it. You're going to add the flesh. You're going to add all those amazing elements. But you just have to have something to get started and something to give you direction so you can go in the right place. So that would be my tip number 5, is to create an outline.
That's so good, because outlining is such a crucial part of, I know, what so many authors use. I've never written a book without an outline. I've mapped my book first, and because I like to see it as like a brainstorm, almost like radial, where the topic, like your big idea, goes in the middle, and then you create these like branches that stem off from the middle, and that allows you to create like topics and subtopics, which turns into your chapters. And then all of a sudden, like all the ideas in your mind start to be a little bit more organized. You're like, oh, I can discern a structure here. And then once you move from mapping to outlining, it's really when the magic happens. But I love what you brought up, because it lends itself so beautifully to tip number 6, which is incorporating not just like the meat of what's going in for all of the main takeaways and all the stories you want to tell, but really inviting other people along on the journey, creating what I call a qualified support team, because this journey can feel lonely. It can feel isolating. I remember staring at my computer and being in a library full of people, but just feeling so solitary in that moment. Like, well, I'm just here with my own thoughts, and how do I really get my hands around what I'm doing chapter over chapter? So research becomes a super important component, because you want to fill in context and rich details about the things that you're sharing. And that can come in the form of like interviewing people that you know and family members and other people who can speak on those particular topics. You can include cultural research that you think is really relevant. But I've come to find, as I'm gathering information, I get the meat in, as you said, Karolyne, right? And I have like the structure for what I'm going to say chapter over chapter. Then it's about creating a deep and meaningful and rich experience for the reader by not just recalling like facts and details from my own story or just sharing my testimony. Yes. You've got to help graduate your reader to an understanding of how the information is going to benefit them. We talked about the promise a minute ago, right? You want to articulate the promise of your book, like in your title and subtitle. And when someone reads the back of the book description, they should get a clear picture about, okay, what problem is this solving in my life? How is my life going to be better served? Or how can I, what is this author sharing that I absolutely cannot miss? And a huge part of doing that is including other elements in the book that will allow your reader to connect meaningfully with the information. And the way that I've done that in the past is not just to research on my own, but to really gather people around who can serve as a qualified, supportive team of people who can not only read, drafts of your manuscript, but can speak into the different sections and say, I know this about your story. What about this? I've had so many people, I've been like, hey, I'm going to share my testimony, or I'm going to include this in the chapter of my book. And I'll read it to them, or I'll teach it to them. And then at the end, they'll say, oh my gosh, well, you forgot about this amazing part of the story. And I went, oh my gosh, you're right. I totally forgot that God showed up in this like amazing way. And there's such a good connection point. So inviting like qualified, supportive people who are excited to be on the journey with you, who you can glean wisdom and different ideas to further the deepening of the understanding of your reader, has been so life-giving for my journey, whether I was writing a book that people were going to read or creating teaching messages that I'm sharing on stages to like motivate and inspire people. Karolyne, will you talk for just a second about like, how do you incorporate other team members, or like, how do you loop people in to make them a part of the creative process so it doesn't feel so isolating?
Yeah, well, just going through the publishing process and working with different editors, And even before putting your book out, getting people to review it in advance to give their feedback, kind of like you said, really gives you a different perspective. And I feel like a lot of times one of the biggest mistakes that authors can make, especially if you're a first time author and you're self publishing, is that you can write a whole entire book without getting any feedback. You edit it yourself and then you put it out there and you're like, wow, people are not responding to it, like, but you never got any feedback. So that's so important. Publishing or writing a book, it's twofold. There's two different parts of the process. There's the pre-production, or there's the part before you publish, right? So there's that process of creating and writing your book. But then after that comes that part where you put it out there. Your book is published, but it doesn't end at publishing, right? You have to know, how do I market my book? How do I promote my book and put it out there, and even share the message? Speaking engagements, getting that message out there, right? Because your book goes beyond just being a product. It's a message, and you want to be able to reach people and take it even further. So I actually created a resource. It's called the Write, Publish, Sell Checklist. And in this resource, I share the steps to writing a book, publishing a book, and then selling and marketing your book after it's been published. Because it's great to have a goal to publish a book and to put it out there, but then how do you market that book? How do you sell it? And I told you guys that I would be sharing the resource with you on, a writing schedule, how to create that writing schedule, and how to have time leadership and be intentional about your time. But I'm also going to be sharing with you guys how you can get my Write, Publish, Sell checklist as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the last point number 7. And after we share point number 7 with you guys, I'm going to share with you guys how you can get these 2 free resources to really help and benefit you on your writing journey, and also how you can work with Erin and I to really share your message and to bring your manuscript, your story to the next level. So can you share with us point number 7?
Yeah, the final tip, number 7, is you have a plan to stay motivated. And you just touched on it. So that was such a key point that you made a second ago, because when you sit down to write your book, right, most of your effort and your time and you're going to pour that into the creating of your book product, right, or your finished manuscript. And then the next step of the process, like my husband and I always joke, like once you get your book printed and published and it's like it's in your hands and you're like, yes, I'm ready to do something with it. That's really when you make it to the starting line of the race you're running, because now you've got this finished book project, you have a message, you're holding it. The next step is to figure out how to share it. And right there, you can get discouraged because it feels like, something that's unknown to you. Like I remember, getting our first book published, we ordered 3,000 copies. And at the time we were in an upstairs condo. It was 800 square feet. We had no garage. Like we had a covered parking space at our little condo in San Diego. And I remember asking a friend from Bible study if she'd move her cars over in her garage so she could house this pallet of books. And we would sneak over, we created a website. We would sneak over, every couple of days and grab a box of books at a time and just ship them out as people would order them. And it started, the humble beginnings for our publishing company just started with a desire to first get the book done, and then to tackle that next big hurdle, which is how do I bring my book to market and actually sell the amount of copies I need to sell to get this message out in the way that I know God's called me to. So tip number 7 is just have that plan to stay motivated, whether it's putting people in your way who have walked the journey, they're farther along in the process and they can speak into what worked for them. But I would say the first step, even before you find those people who are going to continue your feet moving forward as you hit these goals for your publishing journey, is to just stay focused on your why. And your why is less about the finished book product, but it's more about that bigger reason why you wrote the book, right? The bigger reason for why God put on your heart, why he impressed a certain message on your heart and on your story. And the real and bigger reason that not you want to share that message, but that he wants that message shared. And I think it's such an encourager, it's such a motivator, and the publishing, the writing journey a lot of times has to be self-motivated, right? We're not working for a big publishing house where we've got this like team of marketers and PR people, and it's sometimes we're just home with our own entrepreneurial self, or maybe you're a business owner, or maybe you're doing it on the side, like whatever, you know, season of life that you're in. If you know this message has been put inside you and God wants it out, number one, he's going to bring you the people who can further the mission. Our job is to just align with his will, to be faithful, but to have a very strategic plan in place to stay motivated. Because it is easy as an author to get discouraged, or to not know how to do something, or to see no path forward and have to forge your own way. Like I know, Karolyne, I'm sure you could share a story where, you know, not going the traditional publishing route and maybe doing some things on your own, you felt like you got to a standstill at probably several times during the journey. And I did at the same time. And it took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of leaning on people, asking God for guidance, diving into his word. And now I'm so happy to share 7-8 years now into the journey, and having partnered with God to create something that's all over the world. He's expanded it in ways that I never could, but I'm in control, and you're in control of your ability to stay and be motivated about the message that you want to share, because you're really clear on that bigger why God wants the story shared. Karolyne, do you have anything to add as far as staying motivated?
Yeah. It's so important to stay motivated. And I can relate to being a first-time author and going through discouragement, because you're learning everything. You're learning the publishing process and industry for the first time. You may make some mistakes and hiccups that cost you time and money. But one thing that I want to bring back up that Erin stated in the very beginning of this live stream is we've been through it, and we spend a lot of time learning it and making the mistakes and figuring it out. And now that's why we created this video, because we want to help you save time and save a lot of time, because a lot of times when you're making those mistakes, it could be discouraging, right? But if you have the right people in your corner, such as a writing coach, I'm a writing coach, Erin is a writing coach, family, friends, just that support system, people who have authored before who maybe can share their experience and their insight, then that community and that support system will really help to keep you motivated. So you guys made it all the way to the end of this video. Tip 7. So I'm going to share with you guys how you can work with us, because we have partnered on something amazing that Erin founded called Legacy Story Academy. And she created this awesome opportunity to help more than just writers, right? But anyone who has a message and a story. If you're a speaker, you know, whatever it is, whatever story God has placed on your heart, if you're a poet, she really has this academy that she's going to talk more about, but she dives deep into your personal story analysis, into helping you create, you know, the map that you need and the building blocks to really go out and share your story. And I've partnered with her, and in Legacy Story Academy, that is how you can get the Write, Publish, Sell checklist, as well as the writing schedule. So y'all want to check that out. And can you just share with them a little bit more about Legacy Story Academy? Who is it for, and what they can look forward to out of signing up for this?
Yeah, Legacy Story Academy is, and I'm so excited to partner with you on it, Karolyne. You have so much wisdom and experience to speak into this conversation for that writer out there who maybe wouldn't even call herself a writer, has a story, has a message, maybe started it and abandoned it because it felt too hard, didn't have a plan, or someone who's just got the idea for their story or their book in their mind and has not even attempted to try to get it out. That's what LSA is for. So let me give you a quick breakdown of what you get inside each module, what's covered, and what the benefits are. So module 1 really will walk you through how to unlock your unique voice as a writer. It's going to work you through 5 essential components for establishing your authority and your credibility as a writer. Whether you've written a book before or this is like brand new, you've never done it before, we know we need things like vulnerability. I need to access like the Holy Spirit and my intuition to figure out what's going where, How do I orient my audience? You mentioned it earlier, like, should I write my story chronologically? Should I skip around? Should I flashback? Like, what does that even look like? How do I collaborate with other people? How do I write with empathy? How do I actually get down in like the pit that my reader is experiencing and talk with them and not at them, right? We're going to cover all of that in module 1. Module 2 is going to take you as the writer speaker through the 5 steps of a process that I developed called ATP. It's a personal story analysis where you actually look at all of the meaningful events of your life. You create a library, you start grouping the data, looking for patterns with the Lord's guidance, right? And those patterns and life lessons and threads through your story start to illuminate. And then it's just about grabbing onto the powerful language you're going to use to tell that to your reader and weaving that together in such a way that now you've got your language for things like your title and your subtitle and your chapter titles, and everything that's going inside the book begins to come to the surface, whereas before it just stays in your head as sort of just like a mess that's swirling around. Module 2 is all about really tackling that in a very meaningful way. Module 3 is designing your offer. So it's a deep dive into the book mapping process. How do you brainstorm? How do you use your ATP, your personal story, to create a map that will help you outline the book you know the world needs? Right down to every single topic, all the subtopics, so you have a clear, organized plan for when you sit down and write, and use Karolyne's writing schedule she's going to give you as a bonus. Like, it's going to cover how to create the best situation for your book, not the right way to do it, because there are many ways to create the book product that's inside you. We're going to cover all that in module 3. Module 4 is where you actually learn to write your book, like how many ways you can do it. You don't actually have to even sit down and type your book at a word processing document. You can speak your book, you can teach your book, you can voice record it. There are so many ways to get what's in you out of you. So module 4 is all about helping you get that book out a chapter at a time. In module 5, we're talking about these 7 tips that we just covered and so much more, because we're diving deep into the actual book writing experience. How do you set goals and hit them? How do you optimize your workflow? How do you minimize all of the distractions, making them disappear so you can be as highly productive as possible in as little time as possible? And then what to even do, like when you have, if you're working on a chapter and you have a random thought that's like not related to the chapter you're working on, well, it's very easy to like let your brain kind of go that way. What do you have as far as the plan for capturing those important ideas and thoughts that can also disrupt your time? But how do you really harness your creativity so that you are being as efficient as possible when you sit down to write? And that's what's happening in module 5. Module 6 is an entire module we created called Time Leadership. Honestly, it's a breakdown of the exact time investment strategy I use to maximize time, not just for focus and writing and creating, but actually getting the routines and rhythms of life accomplished, right? The work that you have to do, your responsibilities, and also building in time for Sabbath rest, because Sabbath is not a suggestion, right? The Lord modeled it when he created the world. So he wants rest to be a life-giving way for us to refill our tanks so we can be creative and do the work he's called us to do. So how do you manage and steward your time properly happens in module 6. And module 7 is another bonus inside LSA called Your Path to Publishing. Essentially, I'm going to break down all of the ways you can get your book published, from I'm going to go the traditional way, literary agent, publisher, book proposal, like the way that the industry does it, to doing it on your own, to hybrid publishing, to bringing partners and people into the project who can create this book with you, so that by the end of the process, you've got your complete manuscript and you have a full-on plan for getting it printed and published. So that's sort of the breakdown of everything you're going to get inside. And then Karolyne, I just want you to share a little bit too, those 2 bonuses that you mentioned earlier, what they do, because at the end of the day, like, we need a simple process. We want to get our books done. And what you're providing inside the LSA course experience is so important and paramount to effective writing. Will you just talk again about the writing schedule and the right publish sell checklist?
Yes. She's offering so much value. And I just want to reiterate or just share, this is not just a course that she's putting together and then you just watch all the videos. She's going to be meeting with you guys on a weekly basis. You're gonna have access to her, to ask her questions. She's present, she's showing up, she's gonna be in it, and I'm so excited to be a part. When you sign up within the next 24 hours, guys, you get access to the 2 bonuses that I shared with you: the writing schedule, and I'm also going to be doing a teaching to explain to you exactly how to use the writing schedule, how to fill it in, how to use it as a motivator to track your progress, all that good stuff, and the Write Publish Sell checklist. So not only am I going to give you guys the Write Publish Sell checklist, but I'm also going to be providing a video teaching explaining to you guys how to use it to also track your progress. And this kind of will go in line with it tells you how to publish, and it touches on the different publishing routes as well. So if you're self-publishing, or if you want to go the traditional publishing route, it'll also give you tips or the steps you need to take as well in those routes. So you guys really want to take advantage of this. I have the link in the description box. So click the description box below to learn more about this amazing opportunity. And I'm honestly just honored to be a part of it. And there are so many other amazing writers and authors who are part of it as well. So if you want to touch on that, Erin, just to share just more of the value, because I know that I'm offering my piece, with the Write Publish Sell checklist and the writing schedule, and really helping with those areas, but you have other people who have partnered with you on this amazing mission to really help people to share their stories, and they're going to be sharing amazing content as well.
Yeah, I am so excited about all of the bonus content inside this enrollment. I can't even tell you. So quick breakdown. So Mariela Rosario from She Speaks Fire. If you're not already following her, you need to follow her for just encouragement and just to walk boldly in your faith. She's creating a bonus training inside Legacy Story Academy called How to Own Your Story and Tell It Without Shame. And she's specifically tackling those feelings of inadequacy, of guilt, over past mistakes, and just allowing the enemy to work you over, and how to actually break free from that so you can tell your story powerfully and with purpose. So I'm so excited for that one. We also have Amanda Pittman, who's a best-selling author. She's the founder of Confident Woman Co., and her new book, Stand in Confidence, already hit the bestseller list in 6 weeks. So I'm super excited and grateful for her. She's coming on to share 7 tips for writing with full clarity and confidence. So if you don't feel confident in your writing ability, or you feel the way that you're going to share the message is unclear, or you're not able to exactly say what you mean, Amanda in her bonus is tackling all of those limiting beliefs and giving you a framework, the framework she uses for clear and confident writing. So that one's going to be amazing as well. And then another good friend of mine, Jordan Lee Dooley, she's a 2-time best-selling author. She's the founder of Soul Scripts and the host of the She podcast, but her 2 books, Own Your Everyday and Embrace Your Almost. This girl is like your genius expert when it comes to marketing and selling a book. So she's created a bonus inside the program called Knock Out Your 60-Day Book Launch Plan that will tell you everything you need to know, from creating a launch team to how do I effectively market my book so that I can get a lot of sales, and create and reverse design the plan that you need to get there in 60 days. Because like I said, and we touched on this a second ago, the number one challenge once you get that book written is, okay, man, it's ready, it's printed, it's published, I've got it. Now, how do I sell it? So Jordan's tackling that start to finish in her bonus. And it's all waiting for you inside LSA for this enrollment. And I'm super excited for all of the extra content that's coming, not just the self-paced stuff. But again, and just being able to meet week over week. My background's in teaching. I taught in the classroom for almost 10 years. And I can't tell you, for me personally as a coach, how life-giving it is to be able to meet week over week with students, answer questions, give feedback on your book projects. Like I said, this can feel isolating, right? I've got a message. How do I share it? You're going to get plugged into a community of other writers, other speakers, people who want to share their story. There's accountability for you. We're meeting every single week. You get to ask questions and get feedback on your specific book project. And that's really what sets LSA apart from other book writing programs that you'll find out there.
That's so amazing. I just got so excited just hearing you talk about it. That is so awesome. So can you share with them how long do they have to register? When do you get started? I know that this is happening, so y'all better jump on it.
Yeah, this course experience is kicking off the first week of November. So Monday, November 7th, Module 1 is going to be sent to you via email, and our first coaching call is November 10th. So if you're not yet signed up, click the link, go ahead and get signed up. We'll send you all the welcome materials, and then you'll be on with me live Thursday, November 10th.
So exciting. Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing with us 7 tips to write a best-selling book from a best-selling author. This was so amazing. If you guys enjoyed this video, then leave it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you do not miss out on any other videos or updates or the awesome content that we have coming on this channel. I can't wait to see you in LSA. I know that it's going to be a blessing, and I can't wait to see what you guys come forward with. When you do write your book and you do share your story, please reach out to me, reach out to us, let me know your testimonies and how God is using you to share your story for his glory. And like I said, if you missed that episode that I did with Erin on stories for his glory, now is a good time to go and check that one out just to learn a little bit more about her and her story. All right, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next YouTube video. Until next time, bye.